What would you say are the expectations that China and the United States have of their respective allies and strategic partners?
There is only one winner and there is only one loser, and the winner is Pakistan and the loser is India.
The US policymakers think about conflict or potential conflict with China?
If there will be a war between China and the United States, I don't think the United States will defeat China.
It would be equally important to ensure that any such technological innovation is also responsibly met. So needs must be met responsibly. Where do you think China might stand there?
Washington sometimes hold a gun at your head. If you follow China, you become my enemy.
How do you assess the potential for success of such an approach towards foreign policy?
Why the Pakistanis won this battle? Why the United States actually tried to improve its relations with Pakistan? It's also a great pride for China. We are all very, very proud of the Pakistani support.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations at Foothills by ISRA. Today, for our guest, we have Dr. Victor Gao, who is the Vice President of the Beijing-based Center for China and Globalization. Dr. Gao is not new to Pakistan. He is an authority on global and regional geopolitics and is a familiar and very respected voice pertaining to issues on strategic competition among great powers. In Pakistan, he is especially well known for his very strong support for the Pakistan-China bilateral relationship. Dr. Gao, welcome to the platform. We look forward to hosting you today and engaging in conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let us begin, if I may, with the issue that essentially serves as the contextual background for all global affairs that evolve and for most global issues that are ongoing, which is the US-China strategic competition. We have, over the last several years, I believe, seen various iterations of this so-called competition. For example, with the current Trump administration, also with the previous Trump administration, we have seen the US-China trade war. We have also seen a race among both powers as far as emerging technologies are concerned. And also in terms of diplomatic language and political language, we have also seen an evolution. So if we look back, for instance, to the 2011 pivot to Asia-Pacific strategy of the United States, from then on, fast forward to 2022 with the Indo-Pacific US strategy, and also with the United States national security strategy, we have seen how China has been termed or called by US leadership and US observers as a strategic competitor, and gradually, in the latest iteration, as the pacing threat or the pacing challenge for the United States. So, if I may, let me begin by asking, do you believe that China, if not previously, then now, does China accept this categorization of this relationship being a strategic competition?
Absolutely not. Why? First of all, it is true that China and the United States are the two largest economies in the world. China is larger than the United States. If we use purchasing power parity, China is at about 135% that of the United States. And if we use official exchange rate, China is next to the United States. And I think in a matter of 5 to 10 years, the Chinese economy will be larger than that of the United States if we use official exchange rate. But these two countries are completely different. From the Chinese perspective, we do not call ourselves as a rising power. For thousands of years, China has been, during much of the time, very much at the top echelon in terms of development, contribution to science and technology, you name it. And for most of the time, there was no United States. Next year, the United States will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. Is that right? So for China, we do not view the United States as a competitor. Now, it is the United States which calls China by all the names you just now mentioned. They feel so-called threatened. But from the Chinese perspective, we are not here to threaten the United States. We believe the world is big enough to accommodate both a very successful United States and a very successful China. And in terms of our development paradigm, we are completely different. Since 1978, China has been following socialism with Chinese characteristics. We emphasize more on Chinese characteristics, which can be flexible to absorb anything which we believe can contribute to China's increase of our productivity, for example, increasing of our efficiency. But the United States seems to be a little bit lost in their own way. They do not know what exactly they want to do. And there are chaos and after chaos in Washington. As we speak, the US government is locked out. They are not able to pay off their federal employees or military officers and soldiers. It's not caused by China, it's caused by internal problems of the United States. And if there is one thing that China and the United States may compete with, if I zoom in, it will be, for example, if the United States wants to force its ideology, political system onto China, or if China wants to force the United States to adopt the Chinese ideology or political system. But I don't think neither China nor the United States want to do that. I always believe in your God for you and my God for me. So China and the United States have always been different from each other. They will be different from each other forever, even if the size of the economy will switch, one way or another. On the other hand, in the foreseeable future, both China and the United States will remain very impactful, very influential countries in the world. And China and the United States need to figure out a way to get along with each other rather than to lose sanity about the ever increase and the gradual progress of China relative to the United States.
Absolutely. China's military buildup is something that has been quite a topic for Western commentators. In recent years, it has been criticized quite strongly, quite consistently by Western observers. And these arguments have also, they seem to have taken on a strength with the recent China Victory Day parade that was celebrated in Beijing. While China has quite categorically stated that any military strength or so called buildup is aimed only at preserving the peace for China, for the region, globally as well. Yet, despite that, Western observers and political leadership in particular, they have been consistently emphasizing that this military strength should be taken as an offensive strength or should be taken as an offensive buildup. First of all, do you believe that this representation of China or China's military strength is fair or it is accurate from the Western perspective?
I'm afraid it's a complete misreading of China's national defense strategy and the status of the national strategy, defense strategy in China today. Why? First of all, in terms of the military spending, China's military spending still is a fraction of that of the United States. China's national defense spending is only up to about 1.7% of the GDP, whereas the United States is much higher than that. In terms of the absolute amount, US national spending is already above $1 trillion, dollars, whereas China is only about a quarter of that at maximum. Secondly, China's national defense is not for global outreach, stretching over to almost everywhere in the world, building up military bases in dozens, if not more than 100 countries. Is that right? China's national military defense is for defense only, not for aggression. Now, the other thing is that, yes, indeed, there was September the 3rd victory parade. I was doing live commentary with CGTN throughout the morning. I was personally very much amazed by the quality and the magnitude of the new weapons demonstrated. And all the weapons demonstrated have been already put into active deployment within the People's Liberation Army. And allow me to mention that China has 14 land neighboring countries, including Pakistan and also including India, for example. And China has more or less 6 maritime neighbors. China's national defense is not a measure up against any of these land neighboring country or maritime neighboring country. The real truth is that China's national defense is a match up against the United States because China wants to convince the United States that the increasing power of the Chinese national defense will make the United States more treasure peace rather than agitating for war. I'm a firm believer of what I call inevitability of peace between China and the United States. But peace between China and the United States should not be taken for granted. China need to back up with the invincibility of its military, of its national defense, to such an extent that the United States will never be misguided to launch a surprise attack on China or try to solve whatever problems there are between China and the United States through war. No, I firmly believe in the inevitability of peace. War should not be and will not be an option between China and the United States. And I think after the victory parade, the United States most likely has reached several conclusions because the US military decided after the Korean War in the early 1950s that they do not want to fight a ground war against China after their miserable defeat by the Chinese people's volunteers on the Korean Peninsula. I think after the victory parade on September the 3rd, most likely the United States will conclude that they do not want to fight a naval war because US shipbuilding is only less than 1% that of the Chinese shipbuilding capabilities. They probably do not want to fight an aerial war against China because while President Trump has been talking about the sixth generation of fighters, it's only a PPT, it's not anything real or in substance. Whereas China has already two versions of the sixth generation planes. And then, even more shockingly, the so-called phantom planes that the United States has been so proud of can be easily detected by the Chinese side. I even picked up the information that even the B-2 bombers could be easily detected by the very sophisticated Chinese radar. Meaning, if there will be a war between China and the United States, in terms of the conventional war, I don't think the United States will defeat China. Most likely, the result will be the other way around. It will be a complete shock to the United States. In terms of nuclear war, God forbid, I hope it will never happen between China and the United States. If it does happen, it will be mutual destruction. It will be Armageddon for mankind. So I don't think war is a real option at all for the United States. There are problems between China and the United States, of course, but I truly believe we need to resolve these problems only through peace rather than through war.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think that given the acknowledgement as regards China's prowess in emerging and disruptive technologies, do you believe this affects the way that US policymakers think about conflict or potential conflict with China?
Well, first of all, I hope I can tell the American friends in Washington that technologies do not exist in a vacuum. Technologies are very much part and parcel of the quality of your economic development. So we need to look at the economic situation first, then talk about why technologies keep surging out of the pipeline in one country rather than in other countries. Ever since 1978, China has followed what we call socialism with Chinese characteristics. And the Chinese characteristics are all flexible. They can pick up anything in the world and put into the box of or the bottle of socialism and become socialism with Chinese characteristics. And ever since 1978, the whole nation in China, believing in development as the hard truth, have always been pushing forward again and again. We are never complacent. We never stopped, paused to congratulate ourselves. We scaled one height after another because we want to make sure that the Chinese nation will achieve everlasting development. We will contribute to global peace and development, etc. And we will never allow any foreign troops to set their military boot onto China. And we will never allow any foreign power to threaten war against China. So I think China has been developing very rapidly, changing itself as well as changing the whole world. But the United States seems to be stuck somewhere. They are not moving forward. And I think this economic resurgence of China is the main reason why China now is well positioned to introduce one technology after another out of its pipeline. So you may be shocked to see, wow, ZTE has been there, Huawei has been there, Dajiang has been there, and not only in terms of the manufacturing capabilities, but also more and more in terms of the applications of all kinds. Just look at TikTok, for example. It cannot be done by anyone in the United States to such an extent that the United States government even wanted to seize TikTok, try to make it American rather than allowing it to remain as a Chinese operator. Now, in terms of the AI revolution, I think the big significance of the DeepSeek moment achieved in January 2025 had two implications. One was it declared to the world, to the satisfaction of everyone, that AI does not mean American intelligence. So the Americans should really not indulge in the fantasy that AI is American intelligence or they will be successful in building up AI dominance. The second thing is even more profound. According to me, based on my very careful analysis, AI need to be open sourced. And the way the Americans are doing AI is still mostly closed sourced, which is a dead end in my analysis. In the medium and longer term, AI need to be open sourced, meaning AI should be for the benefit of mankind as a whole. No one should be allowed to set up steep walls, try to protect itself, and try to increase the cost, for example, and disallowing participation by other countries. So I think if you look at all this, I truly believe China is doing the right thing. China now always declares it wants to be on the right side of history. So it is not just for today, it is for the future generations. I even went on to say that we in China always think not only in terms of decades or a couple of centuries, we now think about 7025, meaning 5,000 years on top of 2025. And we always want to be on the right side of history. And I think this explains the Americans or mankind as a whole should really be fully prepared to see more and more cutting edge technologies coming out of China. Allow me to mention two very briefly. One is this fusion reaction, meaning achieving huge amount of energy by fusion technology rather than fission technology, which has been used up to today for the nuclear power stations, for example. And there are only three countries involved: China, Germany, and the United States. I'm pretty sure I will be happy to bet my house on it. China will be the first country to achieve economy of scale by the fusion technology. And this will really free mankind from dependence on fossil fuel to a very large extent. Now, the second thing is also very interesting. It's called molten salt based thorium reactors. Again, it is a nuclear reactor generating power. And I think it is much safer, and the raw materials needed for this kind of power generation will be much more in abundance. So I think China is really pushing the edge of the envelope to identify and to promote new ways of generating power and electricity. And while China is now the biggest power generator in the world, I think China's goal is to double its power generation in the coming years. Why? Because China is firmly convinced in the AI tsunami. AI will change everything we do, and AI will need a lot of electricity. So it is better for all the countries in the world to be fully prepared to generate more electricity in anticipation of the complete transformation which will be brought about by the AI revolution. China now already produces more than 250% as much power as the United States does. And China's power generation for industrial use is more than 6 times as much power used for manufacturing in the United States. But China wants to double its power generation on the basis of this very extraordinary amount of electricity we can generate in China, because we anticipate that China will be in the leading position for this AI revolution. And China's national defense, on the one hand, cutting edge technological innovation and breakthroughs are serving only one purpose, that is for peace, and peace for mankind as a whole.
So, do you believe that in addition to China taking the lead in technological innovation, would China also be offering a contrast, or rather taking a lead in terms of responsible technological innovation? Because, as you already mentioned, for instance, with the race in AI and how China is developing quite fast, there is also an environmental impact. And it would be equally important to ensure that any such technological innovation is also responsibly met. So needs must be met responsibly. Where do you think China might stand there?
Absolutely. I think you raise a very important question. Let me share my observations with you. You may know for sure that China now is the leading manufacturer of EV,
Yes.
yes, electric vehicles of all kinds. And China is now the biggest exporter of EV. China now produces up to about 33 million cars every year. But the EV production is still a small percentage of that. China's goal is to push the EV revolution to the hilt, meaning eventually all the 33 million cars China will produce will be EV cars. Part of the reason is fuel cars or the ICE cars will need to use gasoline or diesel, which is truly a very bad contributor to climate change. And by promoting EV car, you really can rid yourself on the dependence on crude oil or gasoline or diesel, and help better take care of the climate change issues in the world. Because we, mankind as a whole, are faced with this imminent threat of global temperature rising up more than 1.5 degrees. Is that right? And here in Pakistan or in China, especially in the Tibetan region, for example, we face the very serious problem of the melting away and the receding of the icebergs on the Tibetan plateau, meaning there are extremely dangerous changes in the global climate pattern to such an extent that we should be prepared for major disruptions of water supply, for example, coming out from the glaciers on the mountains. So I think China is very serious. China is really taking the leadership role in promoting the EV revolution, partially because we want to reduce our dependence on crude oil to as less a percentage as possible, so that we make our contribution to dealing with the climate change effects. Now, there are many other things, for example, and in terms of developing AI, especially in terms of using AI as a new enabler, an accelerator of everything we do as individuals, as families, as companies, as governments, as countries, as cultures, as civilizations, we hope we can reduce contamination and make better efforts in protecting climate for mankind as a whole. And I think everyone should be involved, individuals, countries, different cultures, different civilizations. In that context, I'm a little bit disappointed by the US government's decision to drill, 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 baby drill, because that probably will be a disaster, because America is really already the most energy intensive country in the world. They actually generate a lot of waste for their energy. But if they want to drill more wells, for example, and rather than practicing economy in the use of their energy, probably they will be the biggest contributor to climate change impact, which will be a disaster for mankind as a whole.
So let's bring it now, Dr. Gao, if we could, to the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and in Europe. What we've seen in the last few years is two very different, very contrasting approaches to both conflicts, whether it's Israel and Gaza or whether it's Russia and Ukraine. On China's side, what we have seen is Beijing has repeatedly called to end or to bring a negotiated settlement, to bring a peacefully negotiated settlement, to uphold international law, and to focus on the humanitarian uplift and the suffering of the people. And the contrasting side, what we have seen for both conflicts is the US led Western approach, which regretfully has focused very much on supporting the aggressors or supporting the one party or the other in both cases, whether politically, economically, militarily, which has had the effect of prolonging the conflict, which has had the effect of enhancing the humanitarian cost, and which has repeatedly and consistently undermined international law. So, in the course of these conflicts over the past 3.5 years, now nearly 4 years, do you believe that China's image as a responsible global actor has evolved or has changed since before the conflicts began?
First of all, talking about the Israeli crimes against the Palestinians in Gaza and elsewhere, I think this is truly the most serious, most heinous crime against humanity because from the Israeli perspective, they do not recognize Palestinians as equal-based human beings. They want to kill as many as they can. They want to destroy their culture. They want to seize their land. And they commit all kinds of crimes against them, taking away their lives, destroying families, bombing out churches, mosques, and other places of religious faith, schools, hospitals, you name it. And I think it is a shame for mankind as a whole to be helpless in stopping this kind of atrocities against mankind. Part of the reason is that Israel is not fighting against the Palestinians alone in their own capacity. They are aided and abetted by another big country behind it. And I think mankind should really rise up to the occasion to stop this heinous crime against the Palestinians, to prevent them from seizing the land in Gaza, which belong only to the Palestinians. They do not belong to the Israelis at all. And I think China has been condemning the Israeli atrocities from day one. China has been calling for an immediate end to the killing, to the atrocities against the Palestinians. And China has been fiercely promoting the two-state solution, which will be the only right solution to end this conflict between Israel and Palestine. And I think China will continue to do the right thing, leave no stone unturned to provide maximum support to the Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and elsewhere, for example, until they will have a fully established state of Palestine. I thought many Palestinian people were very much moved to tears back in 2023 when they saw the Palestinian president, Mr. Abbas, got top-notch protocol reception in Beijing because China treated the president of the state of Palestine as equal with all the other visiting heads of states. And there is no shortchanging of any protocol arrangement for the Palestinian head of state. Therefore, China will continue to do the right thing. Now, for the Russian-Ukrainian war, which started in 2022, on day one, China called on both Russia and Ukraine to stop the war, to stop the escalation. Do you know part of the reason from Beijing's perspective is that China realized from day one that this Russian-Ukrainian war has the ingredients or the possibilities of escalating from a conventional war to a nuclear war. So the sooner you bring this war to an end, the better. But the Europeans think otherwise. They want to rearm themselves. They were forced to increase their national spending to 5%. There are even talks about Germany building a nuclear bomb. I said it in London just the other day before I came over here, that as unconditionally surrendered, Germany and Japan should never be allowed to develop weapons of mass destruction because it will be a gross violation of the unconditional surrender document that they signed in 1945. Is that right? So I do hope we will use our reason and rationality rather than emotions, for example, And whenever there is a war, it's always a good idea to put the war to an end and then figure out what's wrong, who should be punished, who should be charged with all the war crimes, for example, rather than try to see the escalation of the war. And I would say Russia cannot be defeated. Why? Because if you inflict tactical defeats on the Russians, then you actually create more incentive for Russia to eventually escalate from a conventional war to a nuclear war, which will be even greater disaster. And the Europeans should also realize, as I hope they will, that there will be no lasting peace in Europe by excluding Russia. And there will be no lasting peace in the world by excluding Russia. Whether you like Russia or not, that's a separate thing. But Russia needs to be included in the security arrangement for Europe, in the security arrangement for the world as a whole. So I hope we will really focus on what matters the most. The most important thing in the world of today is to put an immediate stop to the Russian-Ukrainian war and put an immediate stop to Israeli atrocity against the Palestinian people. Nothing will be more important than these two immediate stops to wars in Ukraine as well as in Gaza.
Absolutely, I agree. I believe also that the regional conflicts in both cases are also very much reflective of the very strengthening alignments or realignments, rather, against the context of the US China competition. So, for instance, if we look at most countries, I believe they not only would prefer to have a neutral stance, they actually cannot afford to jeopardize relations with either state. And the understanding in general is that while there might not be pressure from one side to choose sides, there is probably pressure from another side. So, if, for instance, we were to take the example of Southeast Asia, of South Asia, also of the Indo Pacific region, what would you say are the expectations that China and the United States have of their respective allies and strategic partners?
Well, first of all, I think the real choice for any country in the world should not be a forced choice to pick United States versus China or vice versa. That's not the real choice. The real choice for every country in the world to make is to decide whether the United States is doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And then, based on your decision, you decide whether you support the United States or oppose the United States. It will be completely insane if you see the United States doing the wrong thing and you decide to go along with the wrong thing the United States is doing. It will also be completely insane if China is doing the right thing and you decide not to cooperate with China. Therefore, before you reach the point of picking and choosing between China versus the United States, you need to decide, first of all, and most importantly, whether the United States is doing the wrong thing or the right thing, and whether China is doing the wrong thing or the right thing. So that should be the more logical, more sane decision for mankind to make. Now, it applies to Southeast Asian countries. It also applies to all the Indo Pacific regions, for example, and it will be completely irrational to make a decision without using our own brain as to whether the United States or China is doing the right thing or the wrong thing to start with. Let me give you one example. In theory, the United States pays more UN membership fees and other dues than anyone else. China is the second. US pays is up to about 21%. China pays up to about 20%. But the United States has been in arrears, in default, in their payment to the United States to such an extent that they run up an arrears of about 3 billion US dollars. This is one of the main reasons why the United Nations is going through financial difficulties or even crisis in the right. But China never says and never brags about it. For more than 10 years, China pays more to the United Nations than any other country, even more than the United States did. Why? Because the United States has been in default in their payment to the United Nations. That's how China views its responsibilities, China will never say, holy cow, the United States refuses to pay UN membership dues, so why should I keep timely payment of my dues? China always believes, as a country, as a very important country, as a permanent member state of the Security Council of the United Nations, we have an obligation to keep paying our membership fees and other dues to the United Nations on a timely basis. We will not be influenced one way or another if the United States decides to default in their payment to the United Nations. So, for any other country in Asia or in the Indian Ocean or Latin America or in Africa, do you really think any country will make the decision? Oh, the United States is not paying the United Nations, for example. So why should I keep my payment? I should also default. That will be a wrong decision. And that will really not be your contribution to world peace and stabilities. So I think use your brain first. And I think many countries in the world have that capability. Sometimes they feel maximum pressure from Washington, that's for sure. Washington sometimes hold a gun at your head and say, follow me or follow China. And if you follow China, you become my enemy. No, I don't think that's an accurate characterization of the relations. China is not an enemy of the United States. China does not want to be an enemy of any country in the world. China wants to treat all the countries, roughly about 300 countries in the world, big or small, as an equal. And we want to really join hands with all the other countries to promote peace, promote development, creating enough prosperity to be shared by mankind as a whole and by all the countries as a whole.
So, what we've been seeing recently, all across Asia in particular, is there is an increasing focus on regional integration. So, across different countries, whether we look in Southeast Asia or South Asia, even Central Asia, there is an appetite among the political leadership and I believe also among the civil society for focusing more inwards on minilateralism, multiple platforms within the region, and relying less on extra regional actors or extra regional great powers. We've seen this, for example, if we look at the case of Southeast Asia, where China remains the largest partner in infrastructure financing, where China has a strong technological presence, where China's support, where there is also great support for China's call for a community of a shared future. At the same time, if we look, for instance, at the example of South Asia, we have the China, Pakistan, Bangladesh trilateral mechanism as well. So, looking at all of this and looking at how there seems to be a greater focus or a desire for greater regional integration, more reliance on internal actors, how do you assess the potential for success of such an approach towards foreign policy?
Well, before I answer your very important question, allow me to mention one point. That is the international order we are living in today, established back in 1945, was meant to be multipolar to start with. Just look at the composition of the United Nations Security Council. You have five permanent member states: China, Russia, the United States, Britain, and France, each with a veto power. That means the founding father of the United Nations, back in 1945, agreed that singularity or sole polarity in the world will not work. It will not generate benefits for mankind as a whole. You need to have enough checks and balances. That's why multipolarity involving minimum five permanent member states of the United Nations, and then it will be a safer, more balanced world going forward. Is that right? So the world order established back in 1945 was not meant to be unipolarity at all. And we should be very proud of the fact that we need to defend multipolarity rather than allowing any big country to claim that it is the sole polarity for the whole world. That's number one. Number two is that I think we only have one world. And the one world, the one globe, the one earth is becoming increasingly smaller. Why? Because for mankind as a whole, our perception, our concept of time and space is shrinking. Because in China, for example, our fast train travels at 350 kilometers per hour. And we have new prototypes running more than 800 kilometers per hour, for example. So in China, at least, the distance from Beijing to Shanghai, which used to need 17 hours by the traditional train, now is only about 4 hours. So the country is shrinking in terms of space as well as time. So I disagree with anyone who believes that the world should be fragmented into national walls, building up a national wall to keep other countries out, for example, or to build up opposing blocks, you know, of friendly nations within one block. No, we only have one Earth to live upon. And then, in terms of climate change, etc., it is not a country specific issue. It is really a global issue. In that overall context, I think regional integration is a must, is a megatrend. Different regions, of course, work differently. In EU, they built up European Union for decades, but on some crucial points, they seem to leap through an abyss in two steps, which is very dangerous. Sometimes you need to really accelerate and leap through the abyss in one step rather than in two steps. Otherwise, you'll fall down into the abyss. Southeast Asian region, for example, ASEAN is doing it better, but they are not fully integrating on many things in terms of currency, payment system, economic development, paradigm or methodologies, etc. There are more rooms to further improve the regional integration. In other parts of the world, there are attempts at regional integration, but my fundamental point is a very simple but elegant one. Regional integration is the megatrend. Different regions in the world need to put their action together to promote more and more regional integration. Now, if you look at what China is doing, China has proposed the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRICS cooperation, for example, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, etc. China has been really promoting different alternatives to the country-specific and country-centric way of developing, mainly because the world has reached a point of higher level of globalization. I do not believe deglobalization will work. I do not believe reverse globalization will work. And I never believe that protectionism eventually will prevail. I always believe in free trade. And I always believe in greater regional integration, the greater global integration, and mankind will finally reach the conclusion that we are all the same, regardless of our colors, for example, our height, our longevity, life expectancy. We have many differences, but under the skin, we are all the same. So no one should really create all these artificial barriers. No one should claim I'm the super race and all the others are subspecies, for example. No one should say, I want to make my country great at the expense of other countries. It's not going to work. And no one should be allowed to claim we no longer want to practice free trade, we want to practice fair trade. I've emphasized there will be no fair trade unless it is free trade. Because fair trade without free trade will be fair trade for you, but unfair trade for me. Who is going there to decide which one is fair? Only free trade, meaning involving two willing parties, the buyer and the seller, willingly entering into a deal, will make free trade as a fair trade. So I think in terms of the paradigms, we need to be very, very careful. We should refuse to be misguided by some very dangerous elements who want to confuse you, who want to come up with double standards, triple standards, and then they get the best of the deal, and the rest of us suffer the consequences of the unfair trade.
If we bring it to Pakistan, for instance, in particular, and of course, given the context of a very strong relationship that Pakistan has with China, in the very recent conflict earlier this year in May 2025 between India and Pakistan, after the conflict, Pakistan's diplomatic approach or Pakistan's outreach towards the international community Many in Pakistan believe, many perhaps in other countries also believe, that it positioned Pakistan very strongly as a very key responsible actor within the region, within the smaller region, and also within the broader region. And most recently, what we've seen possibly, which is connected, is, for example, Pakistan's stronger role in the region with, for instance, the Saudi Defense Mutual Defense Agreement that was recently reached. What do you believe is how does China view not just Pakistan's evolving role, whether it's specific to this defense agreement or in general, as regards diplomatic outreach and status after the conflict in particular?
Well, the Pakistani victory in the aerial battle involving Pakistan and Iran early May was generally considered as a victory for China too. Why? Because China and Pakistan really cooperated over the decades. We trusted each other, we treated each other as brothers and sisters. And on the Chinese side, we had no reservation in sharing our best equipment, best technological know how, best military planes, for example, with the Pakistani side. And I'm very happy to see that the Pakistani side used either Pakistani Chinese joint venture produced planes or China supplied the planes, and also other assistance from China, especially in terms of data analysis, data collection, and information technologies, for example, to make sure that Pakistan would eventually win the aerial battle, which is actually the largest scale aerial battle that mankind has seen for several decades. It's amazing. And I think there is only one winner and there is only one loser, and the winner is Pakistan and the loser is India. Regardless of whatever India tried to do in parallel universe to tell the alternative version to fool itself as well as fool mankind. But I think the rest of the world knows very well what happened. Pakistan is a complete winner, and India was defeated in the aerial battle. Now, there are reasons why the Pakistanis won this battle. And this winning the battle was one main reason why the United States actually tried to improve its relations with Pakistan. Your army field marshal, the chief of staff, met with President Trump, I think, 3 times. He was invited by President Trump over lunch, very unprecedented protocol treatment. And the field marshal accompanied your prime minister in visiting the Oval Office, etc. All indications are Pakistan really got a lot of collateral benefits because of this victory in the aerial battle against Iran. Now, your signing of this defense cooperation with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a major vote of confidence in Pakistan because Pakistan now is believed to be a strong country, great military, and the military with great discipline, very good training, and with good equipments, and with a channel of communication with China, which through which you can get other benefits of very advanced military hardware and software from China. Now, purely from the Chinese perspective, we look at the Pakistani victory in this way. We think the future warfare will be completely different from the traditional way of fighting a war. I've emphasized the complete seamless integration of the outer space, the air, that is the Air Force, the ground, that is the Army, and the surface water, that is the Navy, and the submarine. So the 5 dimensions need to be integrated, boom, into a seamless whole, aided and accelerated by the data information and AI. Now, this is very important. Going forward, a fighter plane will not just fight in its own isolated capacity. A fighter plane will be an integral part of a seamless web, fully integrated with all the data involved and accelerated by AI so that your pilot will see further ahead than the other side and your missile will strike deeper into the other side before the other side even is aware of the incoming data or the missile. And this is exactly what happened in the Pakistani Indian aero battle. And I'm so proud that China Pakistani cooperation has really delivered the real results. And I truly believe that China Pakistani military training for decades to come have also resulted in the good results. So the aero battle victory is a great pride for Pakistan, that's for sure. It's not a secret, it's not an open secret. It's also a great pride for China. We are all very, very proud of the Pakistani support. And I think it really helps elevate the Pakistani status in the world. And the fact that President Trump of the United States declared that the Indians lost 6 planes was really very significant. He even later added another plane. He said India lost the 7 planes. I hope this will nail the coffin as far as the Indian losses are concerned. Well, this is truly a vindication of the great, extraordinary success of the Pakistani military forces, including your army, including your air force, and for both and for other branches of the Pakistani military. I'm personally very proud of China Pakistani cooperation. And I've made the point China will have no reservation, no hesitation in sharing the best technologies, military and otherwise, with our brothers and sisters in Pakistan.
A very strong component of the Pakistan China relationship, a very historical component, but perhaps a little overlooked, is the very strong people to people relationship that we have between both countries. We have seen decades of exchanges, whether it's students going abroad to China to study or as Chinese students coming to Pakistan to study. We have exchanges between the business communities, between academics and scholars, so at all levels. And recently, what we've seen is that, in particular from China, there is quite an added focus within Pakistan by means of the diplomatic representation here to focus on public diplomacy. So, more initiatives which encourage and foster people to people ties. So, I suppose that my concluding question to you would be, and if we view this within the broader perspective of China's soft power initiatives, how do you believe that such initiatives can serve bilateral ties between the both countries as we move towards a transition in the near future to a new generation of leadership?
Well, um, from my personal perspective, and I think my perspective is widely shared in China among the 1.4 billion Chinese people, we look at Pakistan not just as a neighboring country. We look at Pakistan as true brothers and sisters. We really believe in these ironclad relations between our two countries. Now, for greater promotion of people to people exchanges, for example, more Chinese nationals will come here and more Pakistanis will go to China to study, to work, to visit as tourists, for example. This will help better improving the mutual understanding between our two nations, our two countries, and it will provide more convincing stories to the two governments and the two militaries to really strengthen our people to people cooperation and our government to government, military to military cooperations. I think in the world of greater turbulence and greater uncertainty and unpredictability, both China and Pakistan should have one thing really very much assured. That is our mutual trust, our mutual support, and our never giving up each other in times of extreme difficulties in particular. So in that sense, I will be very happy. Personally, I've participated in many webinar discussions hosted here in Pakistan. And to the extent possible, I take great delight in coming to Islamabad. And now I know Lahore should also be visited, Karachi, which I visited as early as in 1985, in a stopover, not a real full-blown visit, for example, also calls for my attention. And I've flown above Gwadar port multiple times and I looked from the air to Aguada port. I saw that being expanded, being more and more being completed, for example. So maybe I should go there too to meet with the local people. And more Chinese people coming to Pakistan should be the megatrend. Now, allow me to mention one thing. Each time I read about the killing of Chinese nationals inside Pakistan, it's a pain. It's really a great trauma for me and for my nationals. So we also have a sincere hope that the Pakistani government, the Pakistani military, and the Pakistani people should work very hard to protect the lives of the Chinese nationals. I'm personally very grateful to the staunch support of the Pakistani government and the Pakistani military in providing maximum support for the Chinese nationals. I'm extremely pained to see some of the Chinese nationals killed in Pakistan were working on CPAC projects, were working as teachers to teach the Pakistani brothers and sisters, etc. So I hope greater security and safety will prevail in Pakistan. Social harmony will be expanded in Pakistan, and the country will really enjoy peace and stability and do what we, the Chinese, have been doing relentlessly ever since 1978. That is, treating development as the hard truth, as the only truth, as nothing but the truth for the benefit of Pakistan, for the benefit of China, and for the ultimate benefit of mankind as a whole. Development is the hard truth.
I agree. The security of the Chinese people, who the expats who are working here, who are living here, it is a core focus for the government. And I believe it's also equally important and very close to the hearts of the Pakistani people, given our history. And I believe, as you also mentioned, and from what we also see here, I believe that the future of Pakistan-China relations, as we in the coming generations, it will also be in good hands. So we already have a very strong historical foundation to build from, and it'll go from strength to strength moving forward.
Let me share with you one open secret. I travel a lot, extensively in the world. I've been to more than 100 countries. And wherever I meet with Pakistani friends, wherever, inside Pakistan, in the United States, many places in Europe, and now increasingly many places in the Arab world, in the Middle East, whenever I meet them, a man or a woman, etc., I feel naturally inclined to call him or her as my brother and sister. And I speak by heart because from my perspective at least, all Pakistanis are my true brothers and sisters. I never have any similar kind of inclination or instinct in dealing with any other country or people from any other country. That means there is a unique and extraordinary nature to China Pakistan friendship. And I hope this will endure for many years, for many decades, for many centuries to come, for our mutual benefit.
Dr. Kao, thank you so much for taking out the time and for sharing your views with us. It is always a pleasure to learn from you and to hear from you. Thank you so much for taking the
Thank
time.
you very much. It's a great honor to be on your program. Thank you.
So, on today's episode for this platform, we discussed with our guest, Dr. Kao, a number of issues pertaining to regional developments, to global developments, to the US China strategic competition, to Pakistan's relationship with China, Pakistan's role within the region, and how the two countries can move forward together and strengthen their relations moving forward.